For the charts, we'll be using Apex charts, which are open source, very simple to use charts, which looks very cool, and they do the job for our project. In order to use the Apex charts, we need to npm install them. So if we go to docs, we can already see the command which we need to execute in the VS Code. In the VS Code, we execute the npm installed Apex charts and wait until it's done. Now we'll need to import the Apex charts just like this. This means it's a default import. Because we didn't yet allow it, we have to tell TypeScript to allow, which is called default synthetic imports. We do that by going to tsconfig file, and inside compiler options we have to add a new one which is called allow synthetic default imports and set it to true, and afterwards restart our project. Now we will need a place for our chart. So in the PollVote component we can enter a new div, and we need to give it some ID because we will be rendering a chart. Let's call it poll results, and this div will need some width and height for the chart to know how big chart to generate. So because we gave div ID, we need to use the hashtag and the name, which is poll results. We give it some width, let's say 450 pixels, and some height, let's say 200 pixels. Let's put semicolon here as well. Okay, now our div has width and height, so we can go back to our TypeScript file and create a function which we will call generate chart, and inside this function we'll be putting our data to the chart and rendering it in our HTML. In Apex charts you can read a lot about documentation, customization and so on, but here I just picked the options for a default bar chart. Here I have pasted some default ones, but what is important is that we have these options. We can even give it a type, so you know which are available. We can call apex charts.apex options. And then in the series, we'll have the data, which is the values, all the results of our poll. Then we have the chart. It also requires some height and the type. As we can see, when we hover over, we have the bar, line, pie, histogram, radar, and so on, but they require different configurations. Then we have the plot options, which is not really important to know. Then we have the legend, we don't want to show it. And on the x-axis, we have the categories, and I wrote Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So this is Apex specific, but what is most important here is this data, which we'll be passing in, and also these labels. So these will be our options and these will be the results which we'll be passing in. These are only important parts. So after we have defined the options for our chart, we can just close it because it's a variable, and we can create a new one which we will call chart, and this will be our new Apex chart, and it requires the element, and we can get this element by calling document.getElementById. The ID we set that it's the poll results. That's in our HTML, and we pass it the options. It also requires, let's close this, it also requires for it to know how to generate it. Those are the ones which we define here above. You can read more about options at the Apex chart documentation. And after we have defined the chart, we just need to call chart.render. So our generate chart function will define the option for our chart, create the actual chart, and then render it. So for it to be displayed, we need to call this function somewhere, and we can call it inside the ng on init. And now when we save and look at our website, we can see that the chart is generated, but we don't have any values. So we need to give it some values to options, and these are corresponding to each other, as you can see here. So let's say Monday chose 5 people, Tuesday 1, and Wednesday 10. Now when we save and go back, we can see we already have some charts with results. You can customize the tooltip, you can show or hide the value inside the bar, and there are so many options. It even gives options to user to download as it SVG, PNG, and so on. And when you refresh, there's like cool effect. But we might not want to show both of them at the same time. We might want to show the options when the user didn't vote and the results when he already voted. So his decision might not be affected by the vote. So let's say few people voted Tuesday, then he might be more inclined to vote for Monday or Wednesday. So in order to do that, we also need a variable, and it will probably be input for our component, so we can do it right now. Vote it, which will be Boolean, and depending on this variable, we'll switch between either showing the form or either showing the chart. So if the user did not vote, we want to show the form, and if he voted, then we want to show the results. But we also need to make sure that the chart will not be generated. So in ng on init, we will generate only the chart when the user voted. So we've wrapped it in the if statement, and now the chart should not be generated. We check, and the chart is not generated. That means it's not throwing any error in the console. Moreover, we'll need to add more input variables, such as we want to know those options, which will be our labels. This will be string array, and we also want to know the results, which will be the number array, and we can take this out. And now we need to bind it to our template. So if we go to template and expand this one, the options are actually bound properly, so nothing more to do there, and the results will be used only in the chart. So if we go back to the chart, then inside the generate chart, in the options, this data, we can just change to this dot results, which is our number array, and inside the categories, we can just change it to this dot options, which will be our labels from our poll. So now we have set up the input variables. We will also need one more input variable, which is the actual title or the question of our poll. We can just write question, which will be the string, and then bind it in our template over here, just like so. In order to test this, we need to set up this in our app component. But before, if you look at our website, what we want to do that every time we click on some poll, we want to load this data in our detail view.